What's going on, gamers? I'm Merkaba18. Today we are bringing you our final entry-level leveling guide for Diablo IV. This is going to cover the leveling experience from 1 to 50 on the Barbarian. This is the last class I played in Diablo IV. Honestly, maybe my favorite class, other than the Rogue, which was my first. This one's really, really well done. There's a level of complexity to this class that I don't think exists in the other classes. And I think it's a little bit harder to navigate the ability tree. And I think that there is a lot of like really strong meta builds out there, but I think this one steps away from that just ever so slightly and adds a little bit of a fun element to it. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with the weapon expertise. For this build, you're going to want to focus on two-handed sword expertise and two-handed axe expertise. I have the two-handed sword selected here. But you could also do two-handed axe, just depends on your preference and your gear. So let's also then jump right into the talent tree. Now keep in mind this is a leveling build, and it is not one that is necessarily intended to cover the end game. There will be an end game guide later on with this build and with this character, and you will see a much more in-depth like Paragon walkthrough and gear guide with aspects, etc. So we're going to start here with Lunging Strike. This is going to give you a little bit of mobility. This one's going to let you go straight for particular enemies and then heal 2% of your max life while you're doing that. So we're going to go 5 there. We're going to deal 30% extra damage with Enhanced. And then Lunging Strike also inflicts bleed damage over time, which is one of the reasons you want two-handed swords. Then we're going to come down and we're going to use Whirlwind. This is the most common of the ability use on this tier. The other one that people tend to really love is Hammer of the Ancients. If you're going to go with a Hammer of Ancients build, this is one that you could interchange very easily. I'll show you one change that we would make to the build if you did go with Hammer of the Ancients. But for this one, we went Whirlwind, we went Enhanced, and then we went Bleed damage off of Whirlwind. If you were to go Hammer of the Ancients, you're going to want to use Rallying Cry. In this particular case, I don't think with Whirlwind you need Rallying Cry with this build because you're going to generate a lot more rage than you typically would. With Rallying Cry, Hammer of the Ancients is very, very rage intensive. So if you do go Hammer of Ancients, go Rallying Cry. In this case, we did not. And we went with Challenging Shout, which reduces your damage taken or increases your max life by 20%. And you gain Fury while taking damage. So this is also going to reduce your damage taken for almost half. And when you're in Whirlwind range and you're spinning around in a lot of groups, this is going to come in very, very strong handy. It's also going to be able to pull and peel off of other characters so that they are not taking damage and that you are. That will help to generate rage as well. We're going to go Enhanced. You also gain the 20% life. The Challenging Shout is where you gain 3 Fury every time you take damage. Now, the next one we went with is War Cry. There's a lot of builds that use all 3 cries or all 3 shouts. In this case, I only went with 2 of them, War Cry and Challenging. We're going to go over to Enhanced and gain Berserking for 4 seconds after using it. War Cry also grants you 15% of your base life as Fortify. And then down here, I went with Deathblow. This is where I think this build deviates a little bit from a lot of the base builds out there. A lot of groups and a lot of people are skipping this particular tier. I think this one is a really, really good ability, especially with some interesting gear. It hits really, really hard, and if it kills the enemy, it will completely reset it. It doesn't cost anything. It's got a short cooldown, and it does a ton of damage. So I went 5 ranks on Deathblow. It also deals increased damage to bosses. So the reason I do this is for solo play. A lot of the times when I'm playing with solo, I need to be able to do some single target damage, and I can't really pull off enough damage most of the time by myself on a single target with Whirlwind. So that's why I went with Enhanced Deathblow. If you go Hammer of the Ancients, you're not really going to need this one because this is essentially like the same. It's going to be very similar to Hammer of the Ancients. It's not going to hit as hard, but it's going to do the same sort of thing. And then we went over here to at least one enemy gets hit by it. You gain Berserking for 3 seconds, which is super helpful. As you can see there in the tooltip, it grants increased damage and movement speed. and it lasts up to 5 seconds. For my ultimate, now, this is where there's going to be a lot of variation between the endgame and the leveling build. This is the Call of the Ancients, where you gain 3 enemies that do damage. They also whirlwind, and they upheave the ground and deal a bunch of extra damage. They don't last very long. It only lasts a good, like, 3 to 6 seconds or so. And that goes away fairly quickly. So it's more of a, like, I'm on a boss, let me spam this a couple of times to get a little bit of extra damage, help clean up some of the ads. Then we went with Prime. It is active. It gains a 20%. You gain a 20% bonus to attack speed and damage. And then each ancient gains additional abilities. You also will gain Fury more. You'll also slow enemies, and you'll also be able to stun them, which helps with a lot of different abilities, a lot of different builds. So I then went out and filled in Tempered Fury, Furious Impulse, and Invigorating Fury for extra build Fury there. This is the passive I chose here. This is probably the one you're going to use in the end game as well. When you're at Berserk's maximum duration by 5 seconds and increases its damage bonus by 25%. There is a case to be made for this bleed one, but I think in this particular case, the Berserk lasting longer and doing more damage, you're going to see it trigger quite a bit. And then I came back up and filled in Pit Fighter. I filled in No Mercy and Slaying Strike. And then down here, we're going to go Expose Weakness to make people more vulnerable. All right, so that's the basics of the build. You're essentially going to use your shouts whenever they're available. You're going to use L2 Death as close to the enemy being dead as humanly possible so that it does not trigger a cooldown. If it kills them, you don't get a cooldown. And the thing you want to be careful of and mindful of with Death Strike is you want to be facing the enemy. There's a little bit of a weird element to this one where sometimes you're facing away or you accidentally face away and it triggers in the wrong direction and it doesn't hit them. The targeting doesn't lock on very well, which is probably a part of the reason why most people don't use it. But if it does hit and it does kill the target, it's really kind of a free death blow, essentially. There are pieces of gear out there that will also grant you 2 charges as well. And then Hammer of the Call of the Ancients is what you're going to use to sort of burn some cooldowns and to gain additional fury. I'm using Lunging Strike as often as possible in between whirlwinds. You're basically going to spend a lot of your time spinning in circles, and when that is out of range, you use X or your Lunging Strike to gain additional rage. I appreciate you watching. Look forward to putting out some endgame build guides now. We'll start with the Necromancer. The Rogue build is out. We will link to that in the description. Please remember to check out the live stream over on Twitch. I play this game full time, and we'll be playing each of these characters into the season. We'll be doing giveaways, and we'll be enjoying some of the seasonal content. My very first hardcore character will be for Season 1, and I'm very excited to put out a build guide for that as well. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you again next time.